Standing in my rustic kitchen this morning, watching Jackson tend to our vegetable garden through the window, I felt that familiar warmth spread through my chest. 3 years of marriage, and he still made my heart skip. The morning sun caught the sweat on his brow as he carefully watered each tomato plant. Simple moments like these reminded me why I chose this life over everything else. But as I stirred my coffee, my sister Sophia's voice echoed in my memory like a broken record. "You married beneath yourself, Eleanor. A farmer. Really?" Little did I know that in just a few hours my phone would ring with the most desperate call I had ever received. Before I tell you how my perfect little world got turned upside down, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe, because this story has a twist that will leave you speechless. Now, let me take you back to where it all started. Growing up in our middle-class home in Columbus, Ohio, I always lived in the shadow of my older sister, Sophia. Our father, Robert, a retired bank manager, measured success by social status and bank account numbers. Our mother, Patricia, a former real estate agent, obsessed over appearances and what the neighbors would think. At 35, Sophia had become everything they dreamed of. A successful corporate lawyer with a corner office downtown, married to Marcus, a finance executive who wore $1,000 suits and drove a BMW. I was 32 and had always been the disappointment. While Sophia excelled in law school, I struggled through a marketing degree I never wanted. While she climbed corporate ladders, I jumped from job to job searching for something that felt right. Family dinners became competitions where Sophia won every round, and my parents beamed with pride at her accomplishments while barely acknowledging my existence. Everything changed 3 years ago when I discovered the weekly farmers market on High Street. I was wandering through the stalls of fresh produce when I noticed him. Jackson was arranging heirloom tomatoes with the care of an artist, his hands gentle but strong. When he looked up and smiled, something inside me shifted. He was 34 tall and lean from years of physical work with kind brown eyes that seemed to see straight through to my soul. Our first conversation lasted 2 hours. Jackson talked about soil composition and crop rotation with the passion most people reserved for sports or movies. He explained how his grandfather had started the farm 60 years ago, how the land had been passed down through generations. When he described watching seeds grow into food that nourished families, his whole face lit up. For the first time in my life, I was talking to someone who found genuine purpose in their work. Our courtship unfolded over walks through his cornfields and conversations on his front porch. Jackson taught me about sustainable farming, about reading weather patterns, about the satisfaction of working with your hands. He showed me how to identify different soil types and explained why organic practices mattered for future generations. With him, I discovered a peace I had never known existed. The constant anxiety that plagued me in the city melted away among his acres of green. When I brought Jackson home to meet my family, the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. My father shook his hand with obvious reluctance, asking pointed questions about income stability and long-term financial planning. My mother barely concealed her horror, making passive-aggressive comments about manual labor and limited prospects. But it was Sophia who delivered the cruelest blows. A farmer. She laughed at our engagement dinner, her voice dripping with condescension. What is next? Eleanor, a janitor, a garbage collector. She turned to Marcus, who smirked and shook his head. I mean, we spent how much on her education for this? My parents exchanged worried glances. Eleanor, honey, my mother said carefully, are you sure this is what you want? You could have anyone. I want Jackson, I said firmly, but their disapproval stung deeper than I wanted to admit. Sophia's wedding to Marcus had been a spectacle. 300 guests, a cathedral ceremony, a reception that cost more than most people's annual salary. Everyone praised their perfect match, their bright future, their obvious success. Our wedding was different. 50 guests in Jackson's family church, a reception in his barn, decorated with wildflowers and mason jars. My family attended, but radiated disappointment with every breath. The worst part was not their initial reaction, but how the mockery continued. At every family gathering, Sophia found new ways to diminish my choices. "How is the little farmhouse?" she would ask with fake sweetness. "Still playing in the dirt while the rest of us build real careers." Her comments always came wrapped in sisterly concern, making them impossible to confront directly without seeming oversensitive. Life on Jackson's farm was nothing like I had imagined. The first month was brutal. I woke at 5 in the morning with aching muscles I never knew existed. My hands developed blisters from learning to use farm tools. I struggled to understand the difference between weeds and vegetables, accidentally pulling up an entire row of lettuce seedlings. Jackson was endlessly patient, teaching me everything from how to collect eggs without startling the chickens to the proper technique for driving a tractor. But gradually, something beautiful happened. My body grew stronger, my hands more skilled. I learned to read the sky for weather changes and to spot plant diseases before they spread. The rhythm of farm life began to feel natural: sunrise chores midday, planning evening harvests. Our neighbors welcomed me with genuine warmth, sharing gardening tips and family recipes. Mrs. Henderson next door taught me to can vegetables, while Farmer Dave showed me how to repair fence posts. Jackson and I worked side by side, developing a partnership I had never experienced. We celebrated small victories together: the first perfect tomato, a bumper crop of corn, successfully nursing a sick calf back to health. Our organic certification brought new customers and higher prices for our produce. Local restaurants began featuring our vegetables on their menus. For the first time in my life, I felt truly productive, truly valuable. Our evenings were spent on the front porch, watching fireflies dance over the fields while we planned the next season's crops. Jackson told stories about his grandfather who had built the farmhouse with his own hands. I shared my dreams of expanding our vegetable operation and maybe starting a small farm-to-table restaurant. These conversations, these quiet moments, filled me with contentment I never thought possible. Meanwhile, Sophia and Marcus were climbing to new heights of success. Marcus received a major promotion to senior vice president at his investment firm, bringing a salary that made my parents swoon. Their lifestyle escalated accordingly: a penthouse apartment downtown, matching Tesla vehicles, designer everything. Sophia's social media posts became a constant parade of luxury vacations and expensive purchases. Family dinners transformed into Sophia's personal showcases. "Marcus just closed another $1 million deal," she would announce before the appetizers arrived. "His firm is expanding internationally. They are sending us to Switzerland next month to meet with clients." She spoke as if Marcus's success was her own achievement, basking in reflected glory while shooting meaningful looks in my direction. My parents ate up every detail. Finally, my father would say, "Real success in this family." When I tried to share news about our farm, their eyes glazed over. Our organic certification, our growing customer base, our sustainable practices meant nothing compared to Marcus's latest bonus or Sophia's designer handbag. "How quaint," Sophia said, when I mentioned our farm-to-table contracts. "Playing in dirt while the rest of us build actual empires." The breaking point came during Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' house. Marcus dominated the conversation, pontificating about market trends and investment strategies. He spoke in financial jargon, clearly enjoying how impressed my parents were. When there was finally a lull, I mentioned how proud we were of our new partnership with 3 local restaurants. Sophia interrupted immediately. That is adorable, Eleanor, but let us talk about real wealth building. Marcus, tell them about your latest investment portfolio. Marcus leaned back in his chair looking smugly satisfied. Well, we have diversified into several high-yield opportunities. Real estate development, international currency exchange, some exclusive private equity deals. The returns are extraordinary. He looked at me with barely concealed pity. Of course, farming is nice for those who prefer simple pleasures. I felt my face burn with embarrassment and anger. Jackson reached over and squeezed my hand under the table, but I saw the hurt in his eyes too. We left before dessert was served, driving home in heavy silence. That night, lying in bed, listening to the peaceful sounds of our farm, I wondered if I had made a terrible mistake. Maybe everyone was right. Maybe I had thrown my life away for romantic notions about farm life. 2 years later, everything changed in the span of a single news cycle. I was feeding our chickens when Jackson came running from the house, his face pale with shock. "Eleanor, you need to see this," he said, holding up his phone. The headline made my blood run cold. "Major investment firm under federal investigation for massive fraud." Marcus's company was accused of running a sophisticated Ponzi scheme using new investor money to pay fake returns to existing clients. The estimated losses exceeded $500 million. Federal agents had raided their offices, seizing computers and freezing accounts. Within hours, Marcus's world imploded. Not only had he lost his job, but he was facing potential criminal charges for his role in the fraud. The FBI froze all assets connected to him and Sophia while they investigated. Their penthouse apartment was seized, their cars repossessed, their bank accounts emptied. The golden couple's empire crumbled in a matter of days. My phone rang constantly with calls from Sophia that I was not ready to answer. When I finally picked up, her voice was barely recognizable. Gone was the confident, condescending tone I knew so well. Instead, I heard panic, desperation, and genuine fear. "Eleanor, I do not know what to do," she sobbed. "They took everything. The apartment, the cars, even my jewelry. Marcus disappeared 3 days ago. His lawyer says he might have fled the country. I am staying in a motel room, and I cannot even afford that much longer." The irony was not lost on me. My sister, who had spent years mocking my simple life, was now destitute while I lived comfortably on our thriving farm. But despite everything she had said and done, hearing her desperation broke my heart. The situation became even more complicated when my parents called an emergency family meeting. I drove to their house with dread settling in my stomach. When I arrived, I found them in a state I had never seen before, completely shattered. "Eleanor, we need to tell you something," my father began, his voice shaking. "When Marcus started making all that money, he convinced us to let him handle our retirement investments. He promised returns that seemed too good to be true." His voice cracked. They were too good to be true? My mother could barely speak through her tears. "We gave him almost everything, Eleanor. Our retirement savings, the money from your grandfather's estate, even a second mortgage on this house. It is all gone." The total loss was staggering, over $300,000 of their life savings. They were facing foreclosure on the family home within 60 days. My parents, who had always seemed so secure and judgmental, suddenly looked frail and desperate. "You have to help us," my mother pleaded. "We are your parents. Family helps family." Sophia looked up from where she sat huddled in the corner. "Eleanor, I know I have not always been the best sister, but I am begging you. We need to raise money fast or we will all be homeless." Their solution was simple and devastating. They wanted me to sell part of Jackson's farm. "You have all that land just sitting there," my father reasoned. "A few acres could solve all our problems." I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. After years of dismissing my choices, mocking my husband, and treating our farm like a worthless hobby, they expected me to sacrifice everything to fix their mistakes. The audacity was breathtaking. "This farm is not just land sitting there," I said, my voice rising. "It is our livelihood, our future, our home." "But it is just dirt," Sophia said desperately. "We are talking about family here." The pressure intensified over the following weeks. Every phone call, every text message, every visit carried the same message. Family comes first. Blood is thicker than water. How could I let my parents lose their home? Sophia moved into their spare bedroom, adding her voice to the chorus of guilt and desperation. Jackson watched all this unfold with quiet concern. He never told me what to do, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes when I came home from particularly brutal family meetings. Our peaceful farm life was being poisoned by the constant pressure and emotional manipulation. I stopped sleeping well. I found myself questioning everything. Was I being selfish? Did I owe my family this sacrifice? Could our marriage survive losing the farm? The stress was eating me alive, and I knew something had to give. After weeks of sleepless nights and constant pressure, I finally broke down and told Jackson everything. We were sitting on our front porch watching the sunset paint our fields golden when I poured out all my fears and guilt. "They want me to sell part of our land," I said through tears. "My parents are going to lose their house. Sophia has nothing left, and they think I am selfish for not helping." Jackson listened quietly, his face thoughtful. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment, staring out at the fields his grandfather had farmed before him. "Eleanor," he said finally, "there is something you need to know about this land, something I probably should have told you a long time ago." My heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" Jackson stood up and walked to the porch railing, his hands gripping the wood. "This farm, what you see here, it is not all we own. When my grandfather died, he left me more than just this property." I stared at him in confusion. "I do not understand." "My grandfather was not just a farmer, Eleanor. He was a very smart businessman who bought land whenever it became available. Over 60 years, he quietly accumulated property all across this county. Some of it we farm, some we lease to other farmers, some we rent to businesses." My mouth fell open. "How much land are we talking about?" Jackson pulled out his phone and showed me a map application. Red boundaries marked property lines across 3 counties. "We own about 12,000 acres total. The farm we live on is just the center of it all." I could barely process what he was telling me. 12,000 acres, Jackson? How much is that worth? According to the last appraisal, about $15 million. The words hit me like a physical blow. $15 million. My husband, whom my family had dismissed as a poor farmer, was quietly one of the wealthiest landowners in the state. I stared at him in complete shock. "Why did you never tell me?" I whispered. Jackson turned to face me, his eyes serious. "Because I wanted you to love me for who I am, not what I have. When we met, you were so genuine, so different from other women who only cared about money and status. I was afraid that if you knew about the inheritance, you would never know if your feelings were real." "But Jackson, we have been married for 3 years. Why keep it secret now?" "I kept meaning to tell you, but it never felt like the right time. And honestly, I liked our simple life. I liked that you chose me when you thought I was just a farmer. It made everything feel more real, more honest." I sat there, trying to absorb this revelation. My husband, who wore the same work boots every day and drove a 10-year-old pickup truck, who worried about the price of chicken feed and saved money on groceries, was secretly a multimillionaire. What do we do now? I asked. My family is still facing foreclosure. Jackson sat back down beside me and took my hands. That is up to you, Eleanor. But I think it is time they learned the truth about who they have been trying to manipulate. The next day, I called my parents and arranged one final family meeting. I told them I had made a decision about their request, but that Jackson needed to explain some legal complications first. They agreed immediately, probably thinking I was finally giving in to their demands. When we arrived at my parents' house that evening, the atmosphere was thick with desperation and hope. Sophia looked like she had not slept in days. My parents sat on their worn couch holding hands like they were facing execution. "Eleanor, thank you for coming," my mother said. "We know this is not easy for you." "We just need to know," my father added. "Can you help us or not? The bank wants an answer by Friday." I looked around the room at these people who had shaped my entire life, who had made me feel inadequate for 30 years, who had dismissed my choices and mocked my husband. Despite everything, I loved them, but they needed to understand what they had really been asking of me. "I have something to tell you," I began, "but I think Jackson should explain the situation himself." Jackson cleared his throat and pulled out a folder of documents. "Before we talk about selling any land, I need you to understand exactly what we would be selling." Sophia looked impatient. "It is just farmland, right? How complicated can it be?" Jackson spread several legal documents across the coffee table. "Actually, it is a bit more complicated than that. Eleanor and I do not just own the 100 acres you have seen. We own property throughout this county and 2 neighboring counties." My father leaned forward, squinting at the papers. "What do you mean?" "I inherited 12,000 acres from my grandfather, along with mineral rights, water rights, and several commercial leases. The total value of our holdings is approximately $15 million. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched as the color drained from every face in the room. Sophia's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. My parents stared at Jackson as if he had grown a second head. "15 million, my mother whispered. "But you are just a farmer," Sophia stammered, her voice barely audible. Jackson nodded calmly. "I am a farmer. I am also the largest private landowner in this county. My grandfather taught me that real wealth is not about what you show the world, but what you build when nobody is watching." My father's face had turned ghostly white. The man who had spent 3 years looking down on Jackson, who had questioned his ability to provide for me, was suddenly faced with the reality that he had been completely wrong. "You let us think," Sophia began, then stopped, unable to finish the sentence. "I let you think what you wanted to think," Jackson replied. "I never lied to anyone. I told you I was a farmer, and I am. Everything else you assumed." The room erupted in awkward apologies and stammered explanations. My parents suddenly remembered Jackson's good qualities, while Sophia fumbled for ways to take back 3 years of condescension. But Jackson raised his hand for silence. "I want to make something very clear," he said. "Eleanor and I talked about this situation extensively. We are willing to help family, but only under certain conditions." He looked directly at Sophia. "First, the disrespect stops immediately. Eleanor chose this life, and you will honor that choice. Second, if we help you get back on your feet, you do it with humility and hard work, not by looking for the next get-rich-quick scheme." Then he turned to my parents. "We will help you keep your house, but you will also apologize to Eleanor for 3 years of making her feel like her choices were wrong. She deserves better from her family." I watched my family wrestle with this new reality. Sophia was the first to speak, tears streaming down her face. "Eleanor, I am so sorry. I have been horrible to you. I was jealous of how happy you seemed, how peaceful your life was, and I took it out on you because I felt so empty inside. My parents followed with their own apologies, acknowledging how wrong they had been about Jackson and about the value of the life I had chosen. It was not perfect, and it did not erase 3 years of pain, but it was a start. In the end, we helped them, not by selling our land, but by using a small portion of our resources to pay off their debts and give Sophia enough money to start over. But more importantly, we gave them a chance to rebuild their relationships with us based on honesty and respect. Sophia moved to a small apartment and got a job at a legal aid clinic, discovering that helping people felt better than chasing money. Marcus was eventually caught trying to leave the country and faced federal charges. Sophia was cleared of any wrongdoing, but the experience changed her completely. My parents sold their oversized house and moved to a modest cottage near our farm. They started spending weekends with us, learning to appreciate the quiet satisfaction of farm life. My father, who had once questioned Jackson's financial prospects, now sought his advice on investments. As for Jackson and me, this experience only strengthened our bond. I learned that the man I had fallen in love with was even more remarkable than I had imagined, not because of his wealth, but because of his character. He had chosen to live simply to work with his hands to find purpose in growing food rather than chasing status symbols. Sitting on our porch now watching the sun set over our fields, I think about the lessons this experience taught me. I learned that true wealth is not measured in what you show the world, but in what you build when nobody is watching. I learned that respect cannot be demanded, only earned through character and integrity. Most importantly, I learned that sometimes the people everyone overlooks turn out to be exactly who you need in your life. Have you ever been underestimated by your family, or had someone dismiss your choices only to be proven wrong later? Share your story in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more real-life stories that remind us that appearances can be deceiving. And do not forget to share this with someone who needs to hear that their worth is not defined by other people's expectations. Thank you for watching, and remember that the quietest rivers often run the deepest. I hope your week is filled with genuine connections and the courage to stand by your choices no matter what others might think.